we have regathered after our 15-minute break in order to continue with this very sweet but also somewhat abstruse subject of Kundalini Yoga as Mahayoga. We've already given a taste of what that is according to this first chart. I think we should continue to put it up because we're referring to it. We will be referring to it in this whole series of 3 classes. This particular series, next Sunday and following Sunday, we'll be here at this time and continuing on with this. And if it gets as deep as I think it could, and which it obviously can, we may have a go on continuing with another series, part B of this same subject. You can see how it is rather an all-comprehensive, how it includes all the yogas and all the pathways, whether they be of devotion or highest wisdom or non-duality. Or, I think probably even service and karma yoga gets its best presentation here. Because now you have someone to serve. You've found your way to the owner of the gardens. Sri Ramakrishna's story was that Calcutta has many beautiful gardens, but you only have one day there on your train trip or wherever trip you're taking. And you want to see the best garden. You don't have time to look to compare. So you call up the owner of the garden. He says, "Oh, go to that one there," and he directs you straight to the right garden. You don't waste any time. So that's his way of saying that if you consult the owner of all the worlds, the overseer of all the worlds, who even oversees the word Om, out of which all worlds come. We were talking about that at the break a little. Then you found this key idea, this formless presence, this dynamic power of Brahman called Mahashakti or Mahamaya, and your life is blessed from then on, and you'll never be born in ignorance again. I think Krishna says that in the Gita. There's no family, nobody born in any family, their family will not be born in ignorance who have heard my teachings. So you get all your doubts removed and you give them to your family, and pretty soon there's no ancestors to go back to. Have you ever thought of that? You say, well, my ancestors are a problem. Well, I've got to spend a few lifetimes giving them the Dharma. And then, hey, guess what? I don't have any ancestors anymore. No one to go back to because they're all illumined souls. Or if I do go back to them, they'll welcome me back into the higher chakras with open arms. And that's where we left off, at the heart chakra. It's a beautiful place to leave off, probably a beautiful place to start. So if you had in one lifetime awakened to the heart chakra, had gotten on that train at the first stop, had wended your way up the river, whether it be the Hudson or the Sushumna or the Columbia River Gorge where we give our retreats on the mainland, you're looking at that as a great nadi. And so Ara Eva Ratanabal Samhatra Yatra Nadyaha. The nadis are very important there at the heart, where all the subtle nerve endings meet by the hundreds and thousands, like the hubs of a chariot wheel at the spokes of a chariot wheel at the hub, is the Atman. You see. So if you've arrived at the heart, you've arrived at that splendorific station of spiritual manifestation. The expression there is all beyond sattva. It's pure sattva. The deities there, as we've seen, and even the very element that you associate with it is this open air of rare heights. See, the air of transcendent heights. The poet Tu Fu says, Chinese poet says in one of his poems. So you breathe free there. Vivekananda said that about I want all to be free as the air they breathe. So there's no freer air and more boundless and infinite air of heights than there at the heart chakra. So, and there you're meeting these great high deities that I said are open arms to you. You find they're in you. I mean, it's not a mystery or a miracle anymore You just haven't been seeing them as yourself. I mean, isn't that one of the great things? You perceive all reality as oneself. It sounds like an Advaitic realization, but actually it's just very spontaneous and very natural. Why didn't I see it before? Who else could they be than my own? See, I mean, Holy Mother used to say that about one's own. In Bengali, she would say, you know, you can talk about your ancestors, and you can talk about fair weather friends, you know, and so forth. But one's own is one's own, and you'll have them forever. See, so that's how one feels about divine beings when one self has become divine. See, you can't see any difference. Sri Ramakrishna said once the master of the house, who was served by the servant, who was his favorite servant, did everything for him. One day the servant came in, the master stood up, got off his chair and said, "You sit there now." And the servant went, "I wouldn't think of it, Lord. I wouldn't think of doing that." And he said, "Why? You and I are one. You know, we're the same being." So he's using that story between master and servant at a very deep, intimate level to express how when one finds oneself, one finds all in the self and the self in all. It's mentioned several times in Swami Vivekananda's poems and, of course, in the non-dual scriptures. So you're at that level. Let's read some of these bullet points that fall there, because there are 7 of them and we've read 4. The deities are forms of universal consciousness which manifest in the chakras. So just like the fetus with the soul inside of it, the body-mind mechanism soul, with all its potentials, positive, negative, and mixed, is born here on earth in the womb of a woman. Just so, these deities are born in the lotuses of consciousness. And that's where they took their birth. And so that's their soil, their indigenous soil. They've attained that level, that world, and they will come into that world and leave out of that world. That's where you hear the teachings of beings who move into the heart chakra at the time of birth and move out of the heart chakra at the time of passing. So souls are infinitesimally small, you see. Smaller than atoms, smaller than subatomic particles. You haven't reached the real meaning of what small is until you see a soul. It's tiny. Where's the word for it? It just doesn't exist in physical space. It's an idea, but it's a very powerful idea. It's a germ, you see. And we know germs can kill a tall elephant, as Ramakrishna said. So this is a very powerful germ, the soul, and that's why there are echelons in Hindu cosmology, which is all the cosmologies that exist, Roman and Grecian and so forth. India has fleshed it out to the nth degree, and it has the longest, oldest shelf life because it's always thinking in terms of eternal. So their gods and goddesses and their pantheon, although some people look at it and say, oh, it's too polytheistic for me, you see. But it all comes from this monotheistic realization. Mono is the word, the oneness that all comes out of. So when you're talking about a system like Kundalini Yoga and the chakras, you're beginning to figure out where these deities, like the prana shaktis and other beings, fall in the spectrum of things, and how you can contact them at dreams, how you can meditate and have a vision of your guru who's now out of the body. When I went to Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, peace and bliss be upon him, my teacher, he told us, the mantra is very important to you. Through the mantra, I kept contact with Holy Mother after she passed. I was very impressed to hear that. So he knew that she existed beyond the body because she's the Atman. She's actually the Mother Atman. We don't want to say anything that would belittle that great Paramatman, but basically I kept track of her through the mantra, he said. And I'm showing you her in the shrine every day, he told us. When we go to the shrine and offer flowers, I show you her. but I can't show you the presence of her in my heart. See? You'll have to qualify yourself deeper by the use of the same mantra she gave me until you can find her in your heart. Then you'll find her in my heart. As Krishna told Uddhava in the Uddhava Gita, Uddhava said, "You're going to pass away tomorrow." It's like Buddha told his disciples he was passing, and whenever a great soul tells his disciples they're passing, and they say, "Well, can we go with you?" You see, it's like the body is nothing. That's over soon anyway. I want to go with you. Can I get on the next station and travel toward Grand Central with you? Because I know you're going there. Like Narada said. So this becoming aware then of the deities, gods and goddesses, the devas and devis, is possibly already occurred to you at the Manipura chakra. They even say at the Manipura chakra you begin to hear the sound of Om. That's why some yogis, I kind of think mistakenly, say that it emanates from the crown, from the Manipura chakra. I think it has a much higher emanation than that, but maybe beings begin to first hear it in their deepest contemplations when they've reached heaven. We have to use, or that loka, we would say in our tradition. It's a higher realm of existence. You may still bounce back out of it and go to earth, but you're usually a very good person when that happens to you. You're a higher quality of soul, and you see them here on earth, and talk with them and meet them and so forth. But nevertheless, in the inner realms, they have this high qualification already, but not high enough yet probably to penetrate the Vishnu Granthi and establishing themselves in the heart, anahata, where the sound of Om is vibrating in so many beautiful ways. So you've grabbed a hold of the hem of Mother's garment, and inward you're going toward the realm of Isha, the chosen one. You see him, all other forms, or her, all other forms will you'll lose your attraction for them. You'll become, as it were, dazed and amazed to see that deity of the heart, is the Antaryami, the inner ruler immortal seated in the heart. Beautiful Sanskrit word that I heard first from Mr. Morosi, Vedanta teacher in Honolulu, when we were attending on the sub-center there. He was the first one I heard say that word, the Antaryami. What's that, sir? The inner ruler immortal seated in your heart. It's like Atman, but if it has a form, it's like Isha. So this is something, and we're talking about it here. The deities are forms of universal consciousness which manifest in the chakras. So I took the tact of mind-born children. That's a phrase used in the scriptures, and it actually, fortunately, has an English definition that works. Mind-born children. If you contemplate that phrase, you say, well, you have to contrast it against, blood-born, sperm-born, moisture-born. I mean, there's 4 different kinds of births you can have on Earth: egg and moisture and larva and like that. So you've been born of egg, thankfully, you see, sperm and egg conjunction, and so you're a human. You've been born of a human type, and so that has a lot of positive potential in it for realizing that self-same Atman, and for meditating on deities, opening up nadis, channels. So Omit-jevam jayatha atmanam. So once you have that, you meditate on Om and its conjunction with Atman. Om. So in those chants you'll find those keys, you will, if you will. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these bullet points we've read. Oh, 6. All right, so let's move on in our train ride. We're not getting off at the Anahata station. I remember Sri Ramakrishna saying in the Gospel, when I went to the realm of Indra, which probably is somewhere right between Manipura and Anahata Chakra. I'll have to go and meditate on Indra and ask him where he is, but basically, if you go to Indra's realm, he's the god of all gods. So, but he's not seen as higher than Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, who's the Trinity at a much higher level. So Indra presides over all the worlds on, down, and out, you see, to earth. And so the angels and celestials and ancestors would all fall under his realms, under his control. So Indra, we know our senses are called Indriyas, because they're called little gods. So Indra is manifesting himself through our senses all the time. And Krishna is the Lord of those senses. So we have this kind of, again, this figured pantheon, a gradated level of consciousness in form. It's a part of both here because you perceive the reality of form. Ironically enough, in Abhava, you come to know God with form, don't you? You just transcend it straight away. But if all is Brahman, and if Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, then I must have seen, or had to have seen, that Brahman was here too. See? That was my last word in spiritual life before I left form, was to know that all this is Brahman. I wouldn't have been Advaitist if I didn't know that. So that's the import of having that kind of fully refined and intensified awareness, like a laser beam that's coming here. That's the next chakra after, we'll get to that, after the throat chakra. The throat chakra is called Vishuddha, which means extremely pure. So, I might say, if there were any rub or criticism against the heart chakra, its best facet is that you're not going to fall back to the lower worlds anymore. How could you, when you saw what you saw there and heard what you heard there? But if these beings who were born, as the quote is saying here, manifest themselves in the chakras, if they're manifested there at the heart chakra, then they may want to give up their station and manifest themselves at the throat chakra next, or third eye chakra. And they might want to go in and out of a higher level of consciousness, which Sri Ramakrishna wanted to go straight to the crown and did. Very unique study, very magnificent subtle abilities. He was slight, somewhat tall for a Hindu, physically weak. He used to say, at times, they have to boil his, Holy Mother had to boil his milk down, make his food better because his digestion wasn't very good. But one time, I think it was Niranjan, one of his students came up to him, one of the students came up to him, and Sri Ramakrishna said, try and, invited him to get in a shoving match with him. So the devotee, pushed against Sri Ramakrishna, and Sri Ramakrishna pushed back. So they were like, funny, so they were doing this, and the devotee was quite strong, and pushed him all the way back to the wall. And Sri Ramakrishna smiled at him, looked in his eyes, and all of a sudden, all his limbs fell weak. All the Shakti power went out of him. He couldn't push Sri Ramakrishna anymore, and he lost the match. So this was the kind of strength. You have to think about that kind of strength in Sri Ramakrishna as the ability to go to the crown chakra. Who can do that? Certainly not a muscle man. I've met muscle men and muscle women who, the minute you put them in meditation, run screaming from formlessness, or from darkness, or from emptiness, or from lack of physical things. They run screaming from it. They'll never get into it again. You have a better chance with a child who has none of the strength of a muscle-bound person, to get them into meditation is not so hard. It's almost like they just came from there when they were born in the womb. Floating in the Divine Mother's womb, we're all contemplatives, Ram Prasad sings in his song. So when you're following this mark of Kundalini Mother, following her like it's a trail, and you get to the Lord of Indra, as Sri Ramakrishna said, I went to the realm of Indra on this inner journey, touched that lotus. He opened up to the worlds and he told me, come into this world, be my devotee. I'll make you extremely blissful. And Sri Ramakrishna said, sorry, elevator up. This is, I got beyond mercantiles and shoes and makeup and all the levels of the apartment store. I'm not going to stop here for lingerie, you see. I'm going on to the highest level of the department store. Where's the roof where I can see the whole city, you see. So he turned Indra down, basically, and to go to a deeper chakra. And because that's where the gurus and the rishis and other souls are beckoning you from, you see. They've reached a very deep level of concentration that is leading you to samadhi. There's a scattered form of the mind. There's the gathering force of the mind. There's the gathered force of the mind, and then there's the fully concentrated, one-pointed force of the mind, which gives you samadhi. That's almost a direct quote from Vivekananda. I think it's on one of these charts we'll come to soon. So that one-pointed concentration then is what's allowing you to move beyond the realm of the shining ones to the realm of the rishis, the sapta rishis, the sages and seers. See, they've reached a higher station. Obviously they're operating at least from here, because they're the ones that are giving you the transmission of wisdom. That comes from here. Vishuddha, extremely pure. And there you see it. Ether is its element. Remember, when we talk about the elements, we're talking about they have subtle equivalents. Not just, most people can't even think about ether here, right? About as far as they can go is air. But there is space here. Even physical space is extremely refined, isn't it? I can move this, I can move air, but I can't move space. See, it's all pervasive. It's the best analogy or metaphor for Brahman. Unmovable. So if you're at a high level like that, it's subtle ether, then you're beginning to realize the all-pervasiveness of consciousness. It's like being able to take the sweetness out of sugarcane juice and hold it up and look at it. See, oh, now I know why it's sweet. You see, now I know what bliss is. Now I know why the rishis have gone beyond this beautiful realm to establish themselves in the Vishuddha chakra. There you have throat chakra, 16 letters, 16 sounds, 16 prana shaktis, all working for the highest good of yourself and all living beings. I mean, probably that kind of realization has been sung about. Manavarana sashana ankushahe naratrana tarihari chakshushahe Gunagayana parayana devagane Guru devadaya karadina jane Kula kundalini guma banjakahe Redi granti vidarana karakahe Mama manana shanchala ratra dine Guru deva daya karadina jane One of Sri Ramakrishna's devotees, Devendranath Mazumdar, wrote this called Sri Gurushtavastake. It's the teaching about his guru, Sri Ramakrishna, and what he stood for. And those particular verses say, O Lord, It is by austerities offered to thee that the mind comes under control. You embody yourself on earth to show us the way. Even the gods and goddesses praise you with divine hymns. O divine teacher, kindly bestow compassion on thy humble devotee. The next verse he sings, the powerful spiritual force at the base of the spine awakens at thy touch, and the bondage of desire disappears when you grant detachment and discrimination. But my mind remains restless, even despite these supreme blessings. O teacher divine, kindly shower compassion on my humble devotee. Two beautifully heartfelt verses composed and sung about by this great devotee of the avatar of the age, out of 8 verses. Kula Kundalini Guma Banjakahe. It's like when this powerful force awakens, then what happens to Maya? What happens to suffering? What happens to Vishnu Grantis? What happens to anything that's in my way? And so we talk about power that's very refined, not power that's glorified or grandiose or harmful, but subtler and subtler and subtler as you move into your own consciousness, where all these forces, Mother's showing you, belong to you. This is the terrain of your own soul. And so they talk about it like self-realization. So we have to realize the self, you see. And by other terms, enlightenment and so forth. Nirvana. Nirvana has even been taken apart by the Buddhists and seen through, you see. So this is how just a couple beings that that even write songs about it from the standpoint of devotion, like Bhakti according to Narada, which we'll look at probably next week, because I have a beautiful chart on Narada's Bhakti Sutras and Shiram's 9 limbs that have just been colorized that we can look at when we arrive there, see, as being a part of that all arms containing, you see, hands across the water all the way to India, subcontinent. That includes the sweep of this miraculous Bhakti Yoga, including Prema Bhakti in it. So trying to describe the Vishuddha Chakra then, and those deities that manifest there, and just for convenience, we're using our physical spine, you see, to describe centers, because obviously things get more refined when you come here. I mean, everyone feels this pull. I would say that at the time of passing, every soul would feel this. Should I go there? And most don't. That's how key the third eye chakra is. And I found it, as I've often said, mentioned in 7 different religious traditions of the world. And I have a chart on that. Actually reminds me maybe to bring it. Probably be a good time to have introduced it right now to see what they called it. Jnana Chakshu, White Dove Ascending, If Thine Eye Be Single, and so forth. You have these references to it by different beings in different religious traditions, and how important that is. So I'd say that everyone feels that pull. In fact, a lot of people, when they enter into Vedanta, Westerners, Americans, Europeans, I've noticed, say, well, they've been meditating on the third eye. I had one of my students who unfortunately left the body some months ago, decided to leave it by suicide. And when I first met him, he was meditating on the third eye, and I told him, don't do that. I want you to start meditating in the heart. And every time I wrote him or heard from him, he was still doing that. And I said, I told you not to do that. I told you to meditate in the heart. This is very disorienting if you use it as a main focus. It's before its time, you see. I mean, you probably still have poisons from these 3 lower chakras. Any sincere devotee who's taken a look at themselves is admitting that lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, fear, pride, the 6 passions and the 8 fetters are still there, at least as burnt ropes. Now, you still remember them. You still remember experiences you had with them. You still feel the weights of them sometimes. So, and you're going and meditating on the third eye chakra, you know, the heart is where it happens. Plus, purity, right? If you want to purify things, then you should be looking for that connection between the heart and the throat. If we looked at the 9 limbs of bhakti, which we will probably next week, then you will find that Krishna and Ram and other great teachers are making that connection of purity, throat and heart and throat. Say, because first off you want to hear the teachings, you see. Then you want to spread the teachings. You can't spread the teachings if you're not pure. You see. You're going to be giving out teachings that are marred. I mean, even on the physical level, your teacher tells you if you're going to share these teachings with others, which is a good expression, don't do it when you're sick. Don't give initiation when you're sick. Don't give out the mantra when you're sick. That means physically sick. If you have a cold or something, you put all that off because germs are there of all kinds. So anyway, all of this is around this need to purify, and she's doing the purifying. If you're following her as your ideal and she's taking you up this subtle spine, which is not this physical spine, but again, for convenience, we're referring to it, because in the 60s and 70s they were actually talking about it as being the physical spine, and that somehow all of this was in the physical world, and it had to do with physical objects and physical practices like Hatha Yoga and Pranayama, and physical, like we couldn't get over it, because anything in physical dies and gets born again. Oh, they don't even know about the gets born again. So this is our death grasp on the atomic particle. And Father of Yoga and Lord Buddha were both out to get us beyond that and the ancestors, so that we could be spiritual. We could be ourself. What's the best version of yourself? Be the best you can be. That's not just a military slogan. So there has to be a refinement process. That's why Sri Ramakrishna said, and I'll repeat it, without Mother Kundalini awakening, there can be no spiritual progress. You'll find yourself batting around like a ping pong ball between the 3 lower worlds, thinking that that's all that exists, and you'll forget 2 of them when you're born. You'll forget 2 of them. Heaven will be sort of like a theory to you, see, or a hope. See. But you want to have knowledge that destroys all doubts. She's the wisdom mother that's the power in all words, in all mantras, in all slokas, in all sutras. She's the perfect eye consciousness. May she, the primal guide, our refuge be, as even the great souls like Vivekananda said. So if you are approaching the Vishuddha chakra, then you would see either that the deity is Sadashiva. Sadashiva is an extremely high deity. If you look at the 12 Shaivite Spandas, that is because Samkhya Yoga had 24 cosmic principles that lived forever and will live forever in Indian darshans. But Shaivism came along, did their study of the 24th, and said, well, how about these 12 as interior worlds, vibrating spheres? Well, one of those is presided over the higher worlds by Sadashiva. He's like the truth Shiva, Sat. You can't get any higher form of Shiva than that. And so he's there alongside of this subtle ether that you've realized. And at the throat with 16 of all those complements. Now you're approaching the third eye, Agya chakra. And I think we already read this bullet point. Let's read this top bullet point. Well, no, not yet, because that has to pertain to the 7th chakra, which Sahasrara, which really isn't a chakra at all. Sometimes they'll leave it out of the system. They'll say there's just 6 chakras. I don't want you to think of Sahasrara as a chakra or a realm. It's, it's indescribable. It's like Nirvikalpa, Nirvana, Nirbija. So if you're arriving there, then Shambhu, you see, is the deity there. And there is no more elements. Whoops. Is it whoops? No ether, air, fire, water. What happened to my 5 elements? Even their subtle components are gone. You see? Well, I suppose that's just because they were all mine and I took them back. You see? I breathed them in and I breathed them out and I put them in abeyance. I suspended them. Now they're suspended, you see, in seed form, along with the gunas and everything else that helps everything dance. Dance and destruction's dance, as Vivekananda said about Mother Kali. So the forehead is the assignment, if we want to have a kind of physical reference point. The third eye, the Jnana Chakshu, Krishna calls it in the Gita when he tells Arjuna about it. The third eye, Jnana Chakshu. When that opens, then the truth is veiled, without any trappings. See? Without any worlds, no matter how beautiful they might have been down at the earlier station of your train ride, see, where you piled out to find beautiful things that weren't full of poison. But even beyond that, you see. And so this really begins to bridge this idea of Abhavayoga. You see, I mean, you're qualifying yourself for an all-comprehensive level, if you could call it that, of omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence. You lose words in any language for it. You're going to have to recall it out of the recesses of your deepest experiences. Hopefully you have some. You probably do at this point because you've gathered them in previous lifetimes. That's why you got on the train in the first place. You wanted out of poison. I think that's just a beautiful way of saying it. You awaken at the root chakra. Well, what's so fantastic about the Muladhara with all its poisons and everything? Animals, plants, animals, humans, subhumans, humans who are acting more like animals. You see, and with all the ignoble and horrible deeds that they're committing, that bring them back again and again to that level of a piggish existence. So there you are with this precious gem in a pile of manure. That's how Sri Ramakrishna talked about it. So he used to use that story, and the script. He got it out of the scriptures. You see, Ashtavakra Samhita and so forth. So, doesn't the gem fallen into filth still valuable once you reach in and get it? So that's kind of a description of how you're born in the physical realm with parents, maybe ordinary, hopefully moral, probably not dharmic yet, if you're of the West anyway, and how you recognize some jewel there amongst this degradation that's going on all around you, how you survive in that, how you can even bear it. See, a sensitive person can even bear such atrocities like war and narrowness, and hypocriticalness, not only just in politics and business, but in war amongst countries. So, welcome then to the realm of no elements, where all of this takes place. Whether in subtle elements in heaven or gross elements on earth, they're really mirrors of themselves. Waking state, dreaming state. Gaudapada says they're mirrors of one another. You want beyond them both. Go beyond them both, Sannyas Bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. So you're taking a very deep look and a deep trajectory to reach your highest potential, spiritually speaking, in any given lifetime. Thank God you're on the train. Thank God you didn't get off at stations 1, 2, and 3. What to speak of all the baggage you carried off the train with you at those stations at midnight, and you can't leave them behind because there are thieves out there who will rob you. There's a whole story and teaching about that. So up here to the level of the forehead where pranashaktis, letters, sounds are becoming very few. We like to describe that as a two-petaled lotus here. And probably through one petal, beings are coming out, and through the other petal, beings are going in. This is Om. It started here at the heart, and you saw its beautiful manifestation, but it slimmed itself down like it wanted free of any weights. Get my gist, you see. It got free. It wanted abhava. It had already taken its bath in the worlds of name and form. It was clean, and it wanted out. Because if you stay too long in a bath, you get wrinkled, right? That means, do I have to keep being born and dying again, even at this level? Or can I go beyond the elements and beyond the gunas and realize my birthless, deathless, formless, nameless, timeless, sufferingless self, joyless, blissfulness self too, blissfullessness self, you see. It's even beyond joy, it's abhava. So this is a kind of introduction and gradual ascension, inward ascension again, towards understanding what formlessness really consists of, and how fulfilling that is. You know, you'd have to try and remember deep sleep. Maybe during a time when your dreams weren't very good and your life wasn't going very well. Then think of deep sleep. Because if everything's going fine on those two levels of consciousness, then deep sleep's, whatever, you see. But when you want to awake from dreams, be free from bonds, be free from dreams, awake from bonds, be free, as Vivekananda said, then your waking state is showing up the signs of the 6 transformations, birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death. Then think of deep sleep and how valuable it is to you. How all pain goes away, for instance, and all brooding. And try and conceive of what it's like to be a name without a form. See? The only name you'd be saying would be Shambhu, Shambhu, or one of Mother's names, Shambhini. So you'd be at that level where beings of a very high level are coming in and they're going out. It's if you want to explain evolution and involution in its highest, most refined terms, there it is. It's free of the trappings of evolution with no involution, like science is proposing. And it's free of the trappings of going from heaven to earth to hell, which theology is proposing. It's an evolution and involution of a soul that's omniscient and knowing what it's doing. It comes in, it goes out, like bees go in of Mother Kali's hair and leave Mother Kali's hair. That's a beautiful song in India. Oh, soul is just, my soul is a black bee, and I saw Mother Kali's hair and I couldn't help myself. I made straight for that. What a fragrance. You see her hair. How beautiful, how blissful to enter into it. And so the bliss was so beautiful entering into it, I wanted to leave it again so I could come back and enter it again. That's the kind of coming and going that happens at the level of the Agya chakra. I mean, you hear it, you feel it in some of the songs to Mother Kali that they sing in India. Like, Shadananda Mayi Kali Mohakalar Manomohini Shadananda Mayi Kali Mohakalar Manomohini Tumi apni nacha apni goma apni doma karatali Sadhananda Mayi Kali Mohakalar Manomohini Sadhananda Mai Kali Mohakalar Manomohini. So, Kamalakanta, one of our favorite lovers of Divine Mother Reality, sings such beautiful songs like this. Oh, my Mother Kali, full of bliss, Shatananda. You have even enchanted the mind of Lord Shiva. You dance, you sing, clap your hands, full of the bliss of thyself. O Mother, you are the eternal cause of the universes, clad in space with the crescent moon on thy brow. And on he describes you as Divine Mother, hair flowing like prana and psychic prana out her head, all the way down to the worlds, till you get the blackness of the earth, of nocturnal skies here on earth with stars in it. Isn't that inspiring? So there she is, you see, at her outermost manifestation, she's blissful. And she captivates everyone, even the mind of Lord Shiva. So I'm just saying, as they say, when you talk about Agya Chakra and you talk about a two-petaled lotus, then it's amazing how many things there are to say about that. The unspeakable. All you have to do is spend some time with her, as your own mother, as your primal guide, as your friend in a higher place. We all need friends in higher places. Well, what to say? Whereas there might be some things to say about the Agya Chakra, there's almost nothing to say about the Sahasrara. Even in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, they would ask him, what was that like? And he would go into it. You see, if he recalled the Sahasrara Chakra, or if you recalled or asked him about non-dual reality, which is the king of Abhavayoga, that's what they want, non-dual samadhi. But, this, if you take Swami Brahmananda, the Jagat Guru of the Ramakrishna order, and refer to Mahayoga, you might remember his saying, Nirvikalpa Samadhi is just the beginning of spiritual life. When we all heard that, we went, oh, come on, man. It's like, you're going to convince me of that? Sure. That's like convincing me that I'm an ever pure Atman. It's almost as difficult, you see. So, Nirvikalpa Samadhi is just the beginning of spiritual life? Well, maybe now we can understand what he was meaning about, that he was pointing towards Mahayoga. A synthesis so vast and so boundless, so interconnected, that it could only be held by Mother Kali. She's the only one, and that because she was the author of it all. Even such systems as the Vedanta. And there were songs to her about that. Vedanta Rupini. See, Palayamam, save me. You're the author of the Vedanta. You can do it. You see, save me. So not much to say. So even Sri Ramakrishna would go into it when he was talked about it. One time he managed to say, well, I felt like I was a salt doll walking toward an ocean. And I saw the ocean, I said, no one's ever measured the depths of that. I'll be the first, you see. And so the minute he got into it, he dissolved. Salt into salt, water into water. And no one was left to come back. But these avatars, these great souls, have a superlative ability that no one else has. Maybe not even the Abhava yogis. Maybe this is where another pointer towards Mahayogis come in, is that they have a superlative ability to call themselves back from formlessness. It'd be like a moth deciding to fly into a bonfire, you see, burning up there and then having an idea, maybe I'll just fly out. There's nothing left to fly, you see. Resurrect yourself from the ashes, you see, would get a new meaning there. You become out as an idea moth or something, see, like a dream moth. Whatever the case may be, I think you can understand what I'm saying is that He just saw the dissolution of even the refined ego. Even the Sakshahamkara went away when he walked into that ocean. So that's the only way he was able to really explain to us what it was like to dissolve into the formless Brahman. And he did mention that there were some certain souls who could call themselves back out of it. So Sahasrara is the chakra, because these are all, of course I didn't tell you that, but I think it became obvious. These are all the categories. Under the chakras it's called Sahasrara, really means 1,000-petaled. So if you only had 2 petals there and you went through one of them into the formless Brahman, you'd be amazed at what you see there, 1,000-petaled. Probably more like million or trillion petaled. See, just infinite spiritual experiences there. The element there, none, of course. You're beyond elements already when you went past the third eye. But the deity there is the Parashakti. Now she's taking on her true form. And if you have any attachment to her form, say goodbye to it there. Shambhu was the last form you probably would see of her. But basically, when you saw the Parashakti, you wouldn't be seeing her anymore. There's where she becomes the formless form, the essence of dynamism, the burning power in fire, the wetness in water, the whiteness in snow, the essence in everything. And you've loved that from the very minute you got on the train ride. That has kept you moving inward, even if it took you lifetimes. May she, the primal guide, our refuge be. She's my pole star. My teacher used to say that. Location is the crown of the head. So what better place using? Maybe all of these other places in the body that we're using as sort of metaphors are inadequate to describe. But here, maybe it makes some sense. They say in an illumined soul, the last sign of life is warmth here. They leave the body and it's still warm. So in Vivekananda's case, the doctor felt still warm, getting cooler, getting cooler. He left out of the crown chakra. As a Nitya Siddha would. The doctor didn't know much about this, even though he was a Hindu doctor. You see a little blood coming out of the nose, he said, well, it seems like there's been a great uprush of energy in that before he left the body, I mean, after all, he is an Indian doctor, so he knows something about philosophy, darshanas, and so forth. So, it's just like, and Vivekananda had received the boon, Mrityunjaya boon from Lord Shiva in the Amarnath ice caves, I think, at an earlier time in his life, that he would be able to select the time of his passing. It's a very rare boon to get, that you could, I mean, most people ask the question of, can I know when I'm going to die? Pfft. What are you going to do with that information? Try and pleasure yourself more? But what about an illumined soul, you see? He's not asking that at all. He's saying, can I choose the time of my death? I'm out of here. I had Dalai Lama tell me that in person once, on the stage at the Waikiki Shell when I played music for his appearance there. He said, Babaji, we look forward to the time of our death in Tibet. It was like the Indian chief, it's a good day to die. I'll just walk out there in the battle. So they don't have any high regard for the body. It's not that they have no regard for it. They don't have any high regard for it. It's a few pounds of ash in the end. So they're not considering it, see, as they've already moved inside, past the body. They left the body in dream. They left the body in deep sleep. They left the body in Nirvikalpa Samadhi if you're Sri Ramakrishna. So you could certainly leave the body at the time of death without any angst, you see, associated with it. So I'm just saying the crown of the head, you see, is that place where the great souls will exit out of. You might say beyond great souls, because great souls are still exiting out of these lower chakras. Some of them are entering back into them so that they can help others. But if you're coming into the third chakra, you've just had a a party with your ancestors in heaven. You reunited with them. You had a lot of fun. You see. And you didn't think that you'd be pulled out of heaven to earth again. You didn't think that. You thought you had arrived. See. But your credit merits of the good actions you did on earth had a shelf life, and they were about to expire. And so it's the opposite of left behind. You know that Christian theory. People are pulled up, I guess, in the sky, and their clothes are left behind or something. See, but this is the opposite of that. You're in heaven and you're pulled down. So you're sitting there with your ancestors, and you're all having a good party, and all of a sudden, hey, where did Joe go? Oh no, he went back to earth. Well, it would be a good teaching for the ancestors if they knew where you went. Just didn't disappear into thin air. So in this case, when you're talking about the crown chakra, I did find a few things to say about it, but all in terms of inference. Remember the 6 proofs of truth that we had in our last series, which we're actually working on now for the YouTubes and putting that up for you. But you remember that, those anumana and various proofs of truth that you use to infer something. Well, that can be done also with Brahman or with Sahasrara chakra. Especially once you've seen somebody enter into it, like you did Sri Ramakrishna, because he entered in and came out quite a few times, which is unprecedented in spiritual history in our world. What we can remember of it. So there you have the 7 Sat chakras of Kundalini Yoga, colorized just yesterday. And it was an old chart I put together some years ago. And it has to do with our first introduction to what Kundalini really is and how we can associate it with Mahayoga. How it might be one, as I'm saying with Sri Ramakrishna's words, it might be one of the crown jewels of that crown called Mahayoga, if not the crown jewel. And I'm sorry we only had a quick romance with it in the 60s and 70s, and people sort of fell off from it, and really authentic Kundalini Yoga teachers are rare, even in India. And if you find one and talk to one, then he'll ask you, have you unfurled your sail yet? Have you unwound your coil? This Kundalini Yoga is coiled up in the root chakra. So he wants to know if you began the process of letting her out of that box. What? You're still keeping her in poison? What's the matter with you? She wants to go to the Sahasrara and meet Paramashiva. That's her whole point. Well, what else would be the point when unity and transcendence, all the gems of Abhavayoga, are to be attained on the way to Mahayoga? So Mahayoga rather helps us explain the inexplicable. And when we meet next week, we'll take some of the facets that we find are easily inclusive in Mahayoga. And with the few minutes remaining, I can introduce you to them so that we can look at them next week. As I said, this chart will be our main guide through this whole 3 series of class, and we'll take up all this printing that's here, you can see. But if you go beyond this explanation of the 2 main divisions of yoga, then you'll find that we want to take up bhakti right away. And how that is so apropos and so connected with any kind of teaching of Kundalini Yoga, because if you saw anything most apparent in Sri Ramakrishna that could be seen, it was Prema Bhakti. When he was in states of Jnana or Vijnana, you couldn't see much. People would walk out. See, Oh, is this the show? He's just sitting there with his eyes rolling up. Oh, look at his hair, standing on end. He's got chicken skin brought out too, you see. But he's gone, utterly gone. And he won't be back for an hour or two. So people will sit around waiting, one friend next to the other. You brought me here to see this? So they have no understanding whatsoever about seeing a man go into higher samadhi. Even in India at the time, 1800s. So if you want to see anything that's evidence of that, it would be prema bhakti. It would be this ecstatic love he had for every facet of God and every religion that talked about God, including Western religions, so-called Western religions. I mean, all religions came out of the East, basically, except maybe the indigenous, and maybe even those can trace their origin back. But this intense love for God is the beginning of the path. It's probably what gets people out of the poison, some attraction, based in suffering maybe. And then as it gets more refined, drives them on towards inner realizations that increase the heart and the mind both. So exponentially, they both increase. Jnana and bhakti, the two wings of the bird. My teacher used to always say. So then next week we will look at bhakti according to Narada, and that's when we will take up this chart. I'll give you a quick look at. It was just colorized a couple days ago. The 8 devotional aids of Narada, a beautiful image of Sri Ram in the museum in India as a backdrop, and Krishna and Radha there, of course. This whole thing, which was Narada's Isha. This was Narada's Ishtam, were these divine couples, Ram and Sita, Krishna and Radha. And then we will look at, side by side to that, Sri Ram's 9 limbs of bhakti, which I can also give you a quick look at, colorized yesterday. And there you see Radha and Krishna there. Or Sita and Ram, is it maybe? Yeah, Sita and Ram. So you have these various 9 limbs of bhakti all explained here. And we'll look at that. And all what different beings different times and different darshanas said about the 9 limbs of bhakti. And you can see, very interesting, that bhakti is not limited just to devotion. It has, its 2 later facets are non-dual. So it's a very interesting study of a more complete rendering of what bhakti is according to Mahayoga. So we'll look at those things then next week, and then we won't be able to be accused of being too dry and too transcendent. We'll come down to the level of bhakti and see how valuable all that is and how much a part of every path, including the wisdom path, Bhakti Yoga is. So here then, let's end our class today, our first class in this series of Kundalini Yoga as Mahayoga, and meet again next week. Om Bhadram Karnebihi Srinayam Devaha Bhadram Pasyema Akshabirya Jatraha Sthirairangayishtushtivamsas Tanuvir Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuhu Swasti na Indra Vrida Shravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwadevaha Swasti nastarksho arishtanemihi Swasti no brihaspatir dadatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we see with these eyes what is good and spiritual. May we hear with these ears what is noble and uplifting. And may we, while worshipping the Lord and Mother of the universe, with healthy minds and bodies, live a life which is beneficial to ourselves and to all other beings. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.